Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 5:30 on Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. This is the City Council for the City of Woodland. We are now commencing our meeting. We are going to adjourn at this time to close session. We expect to return at 6 o'clock for the major part of our meeting. So we'll see you all at 6 o'clock. We are now adjourning to close session. Thank you. Still waiting for a couple of council members. I believe we're waiting for one council member now.
Mayor Stollard, I see Councilmember Fernandez is in the attendees, so she needs to be moved over. I don't know if Jay is on.
He is on. Jay.
It's being done right now.
Mayor Stollard, I also got an email from Mark Ullman, and he wants to comment on item 14 when we get to that item.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. We've now reached the hour of 6 o'clock. This is the September 21st, 2021 meeting of the Woodland City Council. We have just returned from closed session. There is no reportable action at this time. I would respectfully ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Present.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Present.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Present.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Present.
Mayor Stollard.
Present. I would like to mention once again that this meeting is being conducted virtually in accordance with the governor's executive order, which continues in effect until the end of this month, after which time it's up to this council or state legislation to allow us to continue virtual meetings as the pandemic continues. We will now, if you have comments you'd like to offer for this meeting, you can call in to us. You can email us, and the information on how to do that is on the agenda, which is available at the City of Woodland's website, www.cityofwoodland.org. We welcome your participation. That takes us to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to invite Spencer Bowen, our communications specialist, to lead us in the pledge. Spencer.
Good evening, Council. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Spencer. All right. This is a time for public comment, and these comments are those that would relate to subjects not otherwise on our agenda tonight. Do you have an item, a comment on something we are discussing tonight? Please wait till we reach that item and we'll call for your participation. Madam Clerk, do we have any general comments tonight?
We have one voicemail message.
Go ahead and play it, please.
Hello, my name is David Macco, and I own a property at 2000 East Main Street in Woodland, and I'm calling to register a formal complaint to the City Council. I have been fielding multiple complaints from our tenants at that building that the homeless shelter that was recently opened up has caused a dramatic increase in vandalism, loitering, littering, drug use, all of the above at our property at 2000 East Main Street. I'm worried that I'm going to start losing tenants when their leases are coming up because of the increased homeless people and their loitering, vandalism, damage, destruction, alcohol consumption, drug abuse, all of the above at the property. It's an ongoing and worsening problem, and that homeless shelter or congregation area that was recently opened in that part of town has made an already bad problem far worse. Those are my comments. My telephone number is 916-443-1500. Respectfully submitted by David Macco, M-A-C-K-O. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Macco, also for commenting. Mr. Manager, perhaps this issue could be referred to the Homeless Outreach Services team or to whoever else you feel would be appropriate.
Yes, we will make sure we follow up.
Thank you. Is there any other written or verbal comment on?
No.
All right, thank you. That concludes public comment on items not otherwise on the agenda. We'll move on to communications from council and staff. And Vicki, why don't we start with you this evening? Councilman Vicki Fernandez, Council Member Vicki Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. Well, I just want to begin by thanking our city police chief, Kath, and fire chief Zane for the memorial service at the police department on September 11th, and to Trisha and Sam Kennedy for their beautiful musical bagpipe performance during that service. So it was nice to see all our public safety officials congregated in honor of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So thank you to them. And also, I would like to maybe suggest that we follow lead of the Woodmark Apartments. The manager there, Barbara Hawkins, hosted a vaccination clinic on September 11th. I don't know if there are other facilities or other locations that might benefit from a similar event. So she hosted that. They had Healthy Yellow coordinate with them to provide vaccinations for any residents who may still be in need of vaccinations, and provided a nice warm breakfast and items for those who came out to get their vaccine. I'm also wanted to thank the Woodland High School cross country team or track and field coaches who provided a lovely Sunday morning 5K run for Woodland's homecoming on September 12th. And they were able to invite a couple of the cross-country runners from McFarland High School track team who were involved in the movie that portrayed their life as young men working out in the fields and becoming state champions. So kind of a motivational moment for our Woodland youth. And lastly, I'd like to congratulate one of our local residents who is on tonight's agenda for appointment on the Yellow Habitat Conservancy Implementation Committee. So I'd like to thank maybe for their participation in this process. And again, any other members of our community who would like to be involved in any of the other committees, you'll have your chance hopefully next spring to take that opportunity to become involved in our community. So thank you again. That's it for me. Thank you, Mayor Stallard.
Thank you, Council Member Fernandez. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. I also want to echo Councilwoman Fernandez's message of thanks to Chief Zane and Chief Zach for putting on such a wonderful event on the morning of September 11th. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really nice way to come together and remember such a sad day. So I appreciate that. I also had some time to have a community roundtable with District 5. So I'm meeting with the community who wants to talk through issues that they're seeing in our district. The second Saturday of October and November, just to address some of these issues that come up in a way that's maybe a little bit more approachable than the ways we have now. So thank you to City Manager Ken and Kim for helping support and staff some of those community discussions as we tackle some of these issues that are being brought up. Other than that, I just want to ask for everybody, the community, to be patient as the construction and our road rehab is happening. We are all, of course, trying to get to our destination throughout town, but just being courteous and mindful of cyclists and school traffic, and just being overall kind to each other, I think goes a long way as we're out there rushing to get to places we need to be. And that'll be all, Mayor Stallard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega. Council Member Landsberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
As you all know, the 150 Celebration Committee has determined that it's best to postpone the October celebration weekend. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that there are still other ways to celebrate Woodland's 150th, this very historic year. The first thing is please visit our website, celebratewoodland.org. You'll see for yourself all the various things you can do, even though we're not going to celebrate together on October 16 and 17. For example, you can do a self-guided bike or walking tour. The maps are on the website. You can share a family story or a video recorded story and put it on the website for all to see. You can purchase a commemorative t-shirt, which was designed by a Woodland High School student. That's available at Sword in downtown Woodland. You can get a 150 celebration baseball cap at several downtown locations, including the library, our library. But please stand by as we reconfigure our celebration for a later date. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, in the various social media things that I look at and participate in, there have been several comments about the quality of our city water. And I want to make sure that if any council member gets such a comment or they see such a comment, please direct those individuals to the Woodland Davis Clean Water website at wdcwa.com. At that website, you'll find quite a bit of information, useful information about quality of our water, how we get our water, our source of our water, and how we deliver water to our constituents. But importantly, you'll see recent testing results, which will provide clear information about the good quality of our water. We are lucky to have the staff and the resources that delivers clean, fresh water to our constituents. I want to make sure that everybody understands that. Feel free to look at the website anytime for yourself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Landsberg, and many, many thanks to you and Councilmember Garcia-Cadena for your work on Woodland 150. We already feel celebratory, but we'll just have to wait for the blowout for another time. Councilmember Garcia-Cadena.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to echo what my colleague said. I'm very thankful that our city continues to honor those who, passed on. There are many cities that aren't doing anything to recognize that date, and I think it's important that we continue that. And so, yes, I echo what you said. It's very important. I attended today the State of the Hispanics 2021 that's put on by the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce out of Sacramento, and they provided an economic impact report. It was really interesting. Our very own Deborah Zavala Batista from the Woodland School Board was one of their panelists, and a lot of good information that I think that we can incorporate at some point. Let's see, I have a list here. I wanted to remind people that the Stroll Through History is coming up. That's October 2nd. It's a great way to celebrate our city in another way. Our 150th big celebration might be off, but there are other opportunities. And the 5 homes that are on the tour are really, they're really spectacular. One of the homes is thought to be the oldest home in Woodland. So it's worth visiting. And there's one more I had on here. I think, other than Dinner on Main is now happening. And I was able to attend Dinner on Main. Vicki was one of my dinner partners, and they're doing just a wonderful job. They're so creative in how they've been able to pivot and pull this off. We had food that was actually cooked in banana leaves it was cooked, and then it was continued cooking with coals in one of the garden beds. And it was all that they're doing out there. So if you get a chance, please try to catch one of the dinner off mains. It's worth your time. And that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Garcia-Cadena. I think that leaves just me. I want to commend all those involved in the cleanup event last Saturday under the leadership of Allison from our Sustainability Committee with considerable help from Ken Lohman and the environmental staff. Thanks to all who came and lent a hand. It was fun. I especially like seeing parents with kids helping out. Secondly, many thanks to Comstocks Magazine and for all the local advertisers who made a special supplement on Woodland possible. You will find it in the September issue of Comstocks Magazine. It shows much evidence of local progress in the coverage, so lots of fun there. Third item, the removal of the Casa Linda Heritage Oak is completed, and while we continue to mourn its passing, I want to say thanks to the contractor and city staff acting at the urging of the Woodland Tree Foundation, and that it has resulted in a number of pieces of the tree having been preserved. They are now being dried for reuse as commemorative pieces, including a potential podium, conference table, and other uses. Fourth, the Yolo County Transportation District met specially last night to take the unfortunate step of suspending 4 of our lightly traveled routes. The move was forced by a lack of drivers. These are good jobs. If you know anyone interested, either contact the district or me and I will connect you. We will have wage increases and signing bonuses for those who will help us move people in our district. We are also working on a point-to-point service where you can get picked up at or near your home and taken to a specific local destination or to a bus stop to connect to one of our intercity buses. So stay tuned for that. I want to mention that I had lunch today with 6 members of the Danish Consulate of San Francisco. They were here examining economic development opportunities and opportunities to work between the country of Denmark and the Sacramento region. This was pursuant to the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. I can honestly say they were very impressed with Woodland as a wonderful place to live and work. And we got some ideas out of that conversation too that we'll be pursuing. Also, after more than a year and a half, Woodland Opera House has opened up its first live play, the musical Singing in the Rain. We got to go Saturday night. It's really a lot of fun. It's playing through October 10th, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 2. So I commend it to everyone on the council and throughout the community to come and enjoy live theater once again here in Woodland. I also want to ask that we do adjourn in memory of Al Smith tonight. Al was the guy who always smiled behind the camera at Wave Cable, and he photographed, videoed Christmas parades forever, it seemed, and council meetings and many other things. Al passed away, and we remember him fondly for all his contributions to our community. And now for the Mayor's Minute. One of the greatest challenges I face as this never-ending panic drones on is remaining patient. Impatience, like frustration, is nothing more than disappointed self-will, not a very attractive trait. I urge us all to double down on remaining calm, kind, and patient, particularly towards one another. A sign at Steady Eddie's Coffee House in Winters advises customers to welcome the new hires and to be patient with all servers as they cope with understaffing. That's a good message for all of us. So many are carrying an oversized burden for any number of reasons. This certainly includes our healthcare workers who have had little respite from the growing demand for COVID care. Before concluding, I would like to again mention that testing is free and quick at Norton Hall, 70 Cottonwood Street, Monday through Fridays from 8:30 in the morning till late afternoon. We have this service courtesy of UC Davis and a generous anonymous donor. Take advantage of it. Most communities have nothing like this convenience. Also, just a block north is the Hansen Clinic at the corner of Cottonwood and Beamer, where you can get a walk-in vaccination almost any time. And now, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 quick updates for the council this evening. First, today we released a survey for the community to provide input on the American Rescue Plan funding that the city's been provided. So working with the council subcommittee on ARP, we put together a very brief 3-minute survey seeking input from the community electronically to share their thoughts around where we should prioritize in 5 key areas that the council's identified for ARP. So we'll be pushing out via social media tomorrow, pretty aggressive outreach to get community to respond to that survey. We'll take those survey results and share those with council subcommittee and use that as part of our recommendation for a spending plan, which we anticipate bringing back to council in October, early November. Secondly, I just wanted to report that the Advisory Redistricting Commission has now met several times, mostly organizational discussion around how to organize their group. But last night we had a very robust discussion and outlined a tentative schedule for seeking public input on the redistricting process. That will start with a public hearing in October, mid-October, followed by 2.5 months and 5 public workshops where they'll host a public open house throughout the community so folks can show up, learn a little bit more about the redistricting process, and provide their input and thoughts around their communities of interest and their thoughts around where the district boundaries should be defined. So exciting to see that group come together and start to gain momentum. And ultimately, we'll be back before the council with a recommendation from that commission in March of next year before the council has to finalize its recommendation and adoption of a final set of new district maps. And then lastly, I wanted to follow up on the mayor's mention regarding continuing remote meetings. Today, the governor did sign AB 361, which will allow government entities to continue under the Brown Act to conduct their public meetings remotely. So we'll be evaluating that, making some slight adjustments to our agendas to comply with the wording in that bill, but anticipate continuing remote format for council meetings, at least for the indefinite future through October, November schedule for now, but work with the mayor to identify when we're ready to move back to in-person. And then just a quick look at long range for October. We've got 2 meetings and want to highlight a couple items. The city has completed a sewer and water rate study. So this is a study that's necessary prior to potentially enacting any adjustments to both our sewer and our water rates. We met with the Infrastructure Subcommittee Council earlier this week to outline the findings of that study, which we will then present to the full council in October prior to commencing a 218 process. We are also anticipating presenting to the council the Spring Lake Park Master Plan updates. So we've been engaged with Spring Lake residents over the course of the last several months to solicit input and feedback on the park master plans and the final set of amenities before we move into construction documents for those park improvements. So we'll be presenting to council the modified master plans based on the community input that we've received, as well as input that we received from the subcommittee of the Parks and Rec Commission today. And then lastly, the SB 1383 topic has not gone away or been deferred, and staff has been actively coordinating with the other cities in Yolo County to conduct an analysis of what we need to do before the end of the year to be prepared to advance implementation of 1383, particularly around the Tier 1 generators in our community. And so we'll be providing an update to the council on the findings of the consultant report and the steps we need to take before the end of the year to ensure compliance with SB 1383. So look forward to that update in October as well. So that concludes my remarks. Mr. Mayor, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. Was there no successful legislation deferring any part of 1381?
Not at the moment. Yep, we're still under an order. There is potential legislation that would relieve cities of penalties for noncompliance, but still obligate cities to pursue implementation. So some slight relief, but I don't anticipate that those conversations are concluded because it's a very complex topic and will require a lot of coordination and investment from communities to implement it properly.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our council staff communications, and we now can proceed to the consent calendar. This is items 3 through 11. Is there any item on the consent calendar that any member of the council wishes to remove for further discussion? I would like to ask that item 6, the animal services contract, be removed for separate discussion. So we will go ahead and do that. And I would appreciate a motion to approve items 3 through 11, less item 6, if anyone's prepared to do that.
Could I just make a comment?
Yes, you certainly may.
I just wanted to acknowledge Noah Lopez, who is the representative for the Yellow Habitat Conservancy Implementation Advisory Committee, who was on the consent calendar for tonight.
Thank you. And I want you to know I had a nice conversation with Mr. Lopez. What a fine person to represent us on the Habitat Conservation Plan Advisory Board. Thank you for getting him to do that, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Is there a first of all, I should ask if there's any member of the public that wishes to comment on any item on the consent calendar. Madam Clerk?
No, I don't have anyone.
All right. Any further discussion before we go to a motion? Motion, please.
I would.
Motion. Oh.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say motion by Member Tanya Garcia Cadena and second by the Mayor Pro Tem Myra Vega to approve items 3 through 11, less item 6. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye. Thank you. That concludes that. Before proceeding to consideration of item 6, I do think it's noteworthy that we have approved as a group the proclamation commending Holy Rosary Parish on the celebration of its 150th year anniversary. And both Mayor Pro Tem Vega and Council Member Fernandez, if you both can bring up your copies of that proclamation, I'd like to invite you to read alternative paragraphs. Is that acceptable? Vicki, is that okay with you?
Vicki, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Yes.
You have it in front of you. So Myra, why don't you begin the first paragraph and then you can alternate paragraphs, please.
Sure thing. All right, so proclamation commending Holy Rosary Parish on the celebration of its 150th year anniversary. Whereas on October 3rd, 2021, Holy Rosary Parish will officially commence 150 years of service in Woodland, California, that began in October 1870, when Holy Rosary Parish dedicated its first church building in Woodland in memory of Our Lady of the Holy Rosary. And
whereas the first Holy Rosary Church was located on Main Street between Elm and Walnut Street, but due to heavy rain and poor construction in 1871, the steeple settled and cracked, and the building was declared unsafe. And as a result, in 1874, construction of a new church building at the corner of Main and Walnut Streets was begun. And this church building was converted in 1912 into the parish hall, when construction of a new church building was started at the corner of Main and Walnut Street. And
whereas the 1912 church building was dedicated on June 1st, 1913, and was used by the Holy Rosary Parish until 1949, when the current church building located at the corner of Walnut and Court Streets was dedicated on October 2nd, 1949. And this church building has remained in use since 1949. And
whereas Holy Rosary Parish opened its first Catholic church in 1886 with a staff of 9 Holy Cross sisters, initially focusing on the education of girls, but later for the boys as well. And
Whereas the Holy Cross Sisters served until 1977, and in 1980, the Sisters of the Religious Order of the Blessed Virgin Mary began their service at the Holy Rosary Catholic School, remaining until 1986, when Holy Rosary School began to operate with a lay staff, as it continues to do so today, to provide an excellent educational opportunity for youth in Woodland. And
whereas during its years in Woodland, Holy Rosary Parish has endeavored to be a positive presence in the Woodland community, often in conjunction with other religious and nonprofit organizations, by helping to feed and clothe the needy, tutor and provide baked goods to youth in juvenile hall, teach students in Woodland schools, give medical care to Woodland patients, serve the community as public employees, and operate businesses that employ many Woodland residents. And
whereas the 150th year commemoration was originally planned to be celebrated in 2020, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, those plans have been postponed to October 3rd, 2021, when masses will be held to thank God for the 150th years that the Holy Rosary Parish has been in Woodland as a place of Catholic worship.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Woodland City Council that it commends Holy Rosary Parish on its 150-year anniversary and expresses appreciation for the many positive contributions that Holy Rosary Parish has made to our Woodland community.
Well, thank you both for sharing that. We do have a lovely resolution, and I will leave it with our city clerk to be included in the display, which I might mention is downtown in the Cranston building, celebrating the 150th year of Holy Rosary Parish. And there's a number of things in there that are part of the history of this wonderful church. So we congratulate all the parishioners and all the people who have made that church the contributor it is to our community. Thank you all. All right. Let us now take up item 6, the Animal Services Contract for fiscal year 2021. Mr. Manager, why don't you give a brief staff report, and then we can have council discussion.
Happy to. So annually, the city of Woodland, along with the cities of Westsac, Davis, Winters, and Yolo County, enter into an agreement to have the county provide both sheltering as well as animal control services for our jurisdictions. Annually, that cost fluctuates. This year's contract, based on the cost proposal from Yolo County, is just over $1 million for Woodland's share. That is reflective of about 38% of the overall cost for providing both shelter and animal control services. The cost structure that we've developed in partnership with Yolo County and the other cities takes into account both fixed and variable costs to provide the animal shelter services as well as animal control. $1 million annually for providing animal control services is not an insignificant amount, and has over the last 10 years, as identified in the staff report, grown substantially from just under $400,000, or actually just under $500,000 to over $1 million now. This issue is one that each of the cities in the county actually share a concern around, and have identified and formed a committee of representatives of all the city and the county to evaluate service delivery models. The current trajectory that we're on is not financially sustainable. So the county is taking the lead on coordinating a process to evaluate how to provide the services that we offer in a more cost-effective, but also more beneficial way for the animals in Yolo County. So the action before the council this evening is to approve entering into this MOU with the county for services for the FY 21-22 year. The $1 million commitment that the city has is offset by licensed revenue that gets assigned to Woodland when an individual pet owner registers their pet. Those fees get allocated to the jurisdiction of location. And so projecting based on prior year revenues for licenses and spay and neuter. We anticipate the $1 million to be offset by about $150,000 to maybe $200,000 ultimately by the end of the year. But I do want to note that the proposed cost for the MOU this year does reflect 11% increase over prior year. And we're working with the county right now to get a better understanding around what's driving the cost increases, how are their resources being deployed and prioritized, and how can we begin to get better data and reports from the county around calls for service and how that affects our community and ultimately the cost for engaging in these services. So conclude remarks. Kim McKinney is as well as available for any questions. She's been the one that's worked most closely with the county to try to get a handle on the costs model that continues to reflect significantly on our budget impact. So I'll give it back to you and happy to answer any questions the council has.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. If my colleagues will indulge me, I'd like to speak first on this and explain why I took it off consent. It has to be taken off consent. It's simply this. In the 11 years I've been here, as the manager mentioned, we've gone from a figure in the 400,000s now to a net of 800,000. That's not just inflation. There's also the thing that disturbs me, and it's always disturbed me, and we've never dealt with, is the fact that the distribution of the cost of supporting it is based on utilization, and we have no control over utilization. So we're paying more than a third, 37% of the total cost. West Sacramento was somewhere around 27%. The county is around 22%, and the city of Davis is at the bottom at 11%. They're paying less than 1/3 of what we pay. And we have never had a good explanation of why that is the case. We've never had any management component to the contract where they would manage our obligation to the point where it was closer to the other communities, if not in parity with them. And so they just charge us whatever it is. And a former council member, Skip Davies, and mayor, always felt that, well, all the drivers have to come back to Woodland at the end of the day. They're probably just adding another hour onto their timesheets for Woodland, so they're close to home at the end of the day. Now, that may be untrue. It's certainly hearsay. But the fact of the matter is, we get charged whatever it costs. And they're saying we're responsible for more than 1/3 of the total costs over there. I do not like that. I think the contract should have a management component in it requiring them to manage our utilization down to something where it's consistent with the other communities that are paying into this. I doubt we can do it for less. I toured the place, maybe 3 weeks ago, and I do believe they're very caring people who do a good job for the animals. They have a no euthanization policy, which sounds great, but somebody has to pay to care for all those animals, and it's largely us, no matter where they're coming from. So that's my beef with this. And I feel like it's been kicked down the road for a long, long time. And I'm partly responsible. Nobody wants to deal with it. And there have been other efforts to try to deal with it, and they seem to go nowhere ever. So colleagues, that's my beef about this. I'm asking our manager, let's get on the road to some resolution of this, at least achieve more equity in the distribution of costs among the jurisdictions participating. Colleagues, do you have any comments you'd like to offer or questions you'd like to ask? Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Sorry, with this fake background, I was losing my arm. So I'm just curious. There are animal shelters in Solano and in Sacramento. Are they running at the same expense? Is this expense typical for an animal shelter, or is ours exceptionally high compared to what is being offered? I mean, I also have been to our animal shelter. It is what it is, but it's nothing fancy or, super high tech. So it seems like there's a lot of money going into this. And I'm just curious if it's standard amount.
Yeah, excellent question. I don't know if Kim has received any reports from the county in terms of a comparative cost for providing service, but It is absolutely a question we will be asking the county as part of the countywide board to evaluate animal services. We'll be evaluating, how our cost for service compares, as well as our service levels, right? There is some discretion that we have to define what level of service we want to provide for animal services and animal sheltering. So there has not been, to my knowledge, a robust conversation amongst all the cities in the county around what level of service we want to provide and what's the most cost-effective way to continue to deliver that. We do know there's a large capital need looming out there as well. There's a preliminary cost estimate for $24 million new animal shelter, which none of the cities nor the county have the funding available right now to allocate towards that project. So there's some significant questions around, how we're going to move forward. West Sacramento, just full disclosure, has continued to play very well with the rest of the cities in the county on this topic, but they have alternatives to potentially shift service delivery to the city or county of Sacramento. And that would put all the strain on the overhead and everything else back on the remaining cities in the county. So they are actively engaged and continue to suggest that this issue needs to be brought to a head. So we will be prioritizing over the course of the next year this issue, and before we sign a contract with the county next year, we'll have better answers for these questions.
Anyone else?
Mayor Stallard, I'd like to chime in. So
Please.
just want to echo the increase, way the 11%. I mean, much higher than inflation. It's just hard to stomach seeing that increase, and just thinking about where else we can put that the funding towards. And I think it's important with a contract of this magnitude to have that management component and really have those reportable outcomes and have a management to contain costs, right? So, and I'm part of the JPA that's discussing this, and something that has been absent is just having those outcomes and having that conversation with really the very clear focus to contain these costs and come up with a way through partnership or innovation to have a humane service for animals, but also recognizing that we need to contain these costs. So I look forward to that conversation with that JPA.
Thank you. I would like to also add, our community to the south of us has 10,000 more people than we do, and they're paying less than 1/3 what we pay. So maybe it's on us that we aren't managing our pet population well. When we're paying out $1 million to an agency, I would expect that managing our problem would be part of that service, but it isn't. And somehow it has to become part of that contract, or we have to take it on to get our population so that our treatment of animals and care of animals is not so demanding on that service, and we end up paying such a disproportionately large share of the total. So there's multiple issues here for sure. Okay, anyone else? All right, what's the council's pleasure? Oh, public comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Madam Clerk?
No.
All right, we have no public comment, so back to council for action. And Council Member Lansford, did you not participate in a discussion on this as a representative of our council?
Yes, I have, Mr. Mayor. And, the answer is that, the government shouldn't be in the business of managing animals. There are plenty of people in the community who love the animals enough that they're willing to do the work. Paying government wages and benefits to people to manage animals is the wrong approach. Other communities across the United States, including local communities, Roseville, Placer County, they manage a joint venture between government and private enterprise to manage their animal population and their animal control. Certainly, one of the things that's expensive when government runs the program is benefits and salaries. It comes down to simple economics, Mr. Mayor. Both Mayor Pro Tem Vega and I are appointed to that committee that has really honestly not done much. I just learned the other day that the next meeting has been canceled. And we know why, because we at the last meeting, we proposed that we do address this issue once and for all, because you're absolutely right. It's been shoved under the carpet. If somebody wants to pay me $2,800 a day, I'll go pick up the animals and take them somewhere. So that's what it's costing us every single day is $2,800. Certainly, there are agencies out there such as the SPCA or perhaps some other animal welfare organization who are willing to take this on and probably honestly do a better job at it. They have a different perspective of animal control as opposed to government. That's my 2 cents. It's difficult, but we have to move this along because we cannot be in the business of picking up animals effective tomorrow. So that means we have to move this budget item along for now. But you're absolutely right. We need to address it over the next year so that we're not in the same position with another 11 or 15% increase for the following year. Thank you.
I appreciate your frankness. What would you think of approving a 6-month extension of the contract at half this amount and revisit the issue in 6 months as opposed to waiting a full year?
Well, conceptually, I like the idea. I'm not sure how that would work. Maybe perhaps the city manager can weigh in on that. If that is an option tonight, I would support that if that is an option.
Mr. Manager?
Yeah, and the challenge with that concept is we're already 3 months into the fiscal year, so that would only give us 3 months to really work out some of these major issues. So, possibly a 9-month contract that would give us until budget season next year to really sort of hone in on this issue. So, I would absolutely support that to sort of keep the pressure on the conversation with the county to come up with more sustainable solutions. I would recommend we structure it as a 9-month contract for now.
That's acceptable. Go ahead,
I'll make
Rich.
a motion for 9-month contract with the animal services folks.
At $750 amount.
Yes.
I'll second that motion, Mayor Seller.
Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Landsberg, second by Mayor Pro Tem Vega, that we modify the recommended action to provide for a 9-month extension at 3/4 of the total amount indicated in the staff report. Is there further discussion on this?
Mayor, if I could just clarify on this point, though, the contract that you have before you is a 1-year contract. So the terms of that contract are for 1 year. So you would have to, excuse me, you would have to, that would be contingent on the council or on the county agreeing to those terms.
Well,
so it's not something you could necessarily resolve tonight. You could direct staff to go back and indicate to the county that you would want a 9-month contract, but that's, there wouldn't be certainty to that point.
Thank you for the important clarification. Manager Hyatt, do you feel you can go ahead and do that and then bring it back next meeting?
Certainly, yeah. We'll continue to receive services under the current cost model. So unless and until we reach agreement with the county on this year's contract, we'll operate with the same cost allocation, but we'll endeavor to bring back to the council at the October 5th meeting an agreement, hopefully, that the county can concur with.
I think you can put it on the consent calendar given our discussion this evening.
Okay.
All right. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'm looking around. Okay. Well, let's proceed to a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez?
I'm confused on
What we're doing?
Yeah, I thought
what we are doing,
Can you please clarify the motion and what we've agreed to? I can abstain because I'm confused.
Yeah, we are giving direction to staff to negotiate with the county for a 9-month extension of the contract at 3/4 of the dollar amount. So the actual contract, if successfully negotiated, will come back to us at a future meeting on the consent calendar.
So we're not voting on what's in our packet, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Fernandez, aye.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. I hope we can make some progress at long last. All right, that concludes the consent calendar items and others, and moves us to item I, public hearings. And the first is item 12, the public hearing and approval of fiscal year 2021 Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. And I'd respectfully say we don't really need a long staff report on this. It's just something we do annually to meet a requirement of the federal government. Mr. Hyatt?
Yeah, I'll actually go ahead and hand it off to Dan Sokolow to walk the council through a brief 3-minute presentation on the item and
Thank you.
questions.
Can't hear you, Dan.
You're not coming through. Is your speaker turned on?
Still can't hear you.
Yeah, it isn't. It's always so frustrating, Dan. We understand how you feel. Jay, can you help Dan?
Dan, I can give you a call in a moment.
Perhaps we can pass that, Mr. Mayor, and go to the next one.
That's a good idea, Councilmember Landsberg. Thank you so much. We're going to go to reports of the city manager and item 13, presentation on the Yolo County HHSA crisis now. And Mr. Manager, would you introduce the item, please?
Yeah, happy to. And then I'll hand it over to Director Larson for a presentation on this item. So the Crisis Now model is a model that the county has been exploring in earnest for the last 6 or 8 months. We've had several conversations with the Public Safety Subcommittee of the City Council around what this model will look like. And Director Larson will share in more detail how the model works. But at the end of the day, what the objective is for this project is to develop a countywide coordinated model where individuals that are experiencing either mental health or drug-related issues will have a different response model where through both dispatch and ultimately individuals, case managers that engage with these folks will respond in a way that puts less reliance on law enforcement, less reliance on our fire department to respond to these situations and then kind of triage the situation. So a key component of the proposal will be to establish a sobering center facility where individuals that actually need to be taken into supportive care to help them manage through their issues and stabilize the situation will be a key component. What this will do is not only reduce impacts on our own law enforcement and public safety response, but also on our local healthcare system, which ultimately currently receives a lot of these folks through 911 calls for service and ultimately delivery to the hospital emergency rooms. So a key component of the program would be to partner with our healthcare system to help fund this, given the benefits to their operations, and ultimately provide more coordinated and comprehensive care to the individuals that need it. So with that, Karen, I will turn it over to you to walk the council through more specifics around the Crisis Now model. Ultimately, council, what we're asking for this evening is one to provide any questions or comments around the proposed model, and then direction to staff to work with the county and the other cities to develop an MOU to ultimately implement a pilot program. At the present moment, we are identifying potential American Rescue Plan dollars to be earmarked to help launch this program and give us a 3-year experience and ultimately, hopefully, a long-term funding plan and strategy that will not rely on city general fund discretionary dollars to continue it. So with that, I'll conclude the introduction. Karen, if you don't mind, walking the council in more detail through your presentation, that'd be great.
Welcome, Karen Larson. We're glad to have you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm going to do my best to share my screen now. I'm hoping, can you see this now? Let's see. Just take a deep breath and share. Okay. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, you might want to make it a full page if you can.
Let's see.
If you move the cursor just a little to the right, yeah.
How's that?
Perfect.
Much better.
Perfect. Thank you for your patience. I've never had to actually be the one sharing the slideshow, so thanks for suffering through that with me. Thank you, Mayor Stallard and members of the council for having me tonight. As I was introduced, my name is Karen Larson. I'm the Director for Health and Human Services for Yolo County. And it's my honor to talk to you tonight about the Crisis Now model. This is our kind of continuum of crisis. I think we can all agree that over the last 19 months or so, we have moved from somewhere on the right of this column to somewhere closer to the left. We all know that our communities are struggling, that it's been especially hard on our children and youth, and our communities of color and those that have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. I think what I want to really point out in this slide is that this far left column is really the piece of the crisis continuum that we're talking about addressing with the Crisis Now model. So we're really talking about those individuals who are in our community, who are a danger to themselves or others, who are gravely disabled, which basically means they can't properly care for themselves, or who are actively psychotic, either due to a mental health issue or a substance use issue. And I think that's a key difference in this model than ones we've presented before, because we really are talking about taking care of both those in mental health crisis as well as those struggling with substance use crises. I think it's interesting to point out that this month is Recovery Month and Suicide Prevention Month, and those two issues are uniquely addressed by this model, and I think something that is needed more now than ever in light of what we've been living through. I thought I would address a little bit about what we've done over the years to try and intervene in these crises and the different things we've tried. We had mobile crisis in Yolo County from 1981 to 2011. That was basically where we had people from suicide prevention show up at the hospitals to help clear people. In 2014, we started SB 82, which was our original co-responder program. That was a grant-funded program, and when the grant funding went away, we couldn't sustain it. Subsequent to that, we tried an urgent care facility in West Sacramento that had extended hours and was several days a week, and we found that was underutilized as well. Several of the, like Woodland jurisdiction in Davis, didn't really want to drive all the way over to West Sac to drop people off. And now we're moving towards this Crisis Now model. And I think the difference is we really have been mindful about finding an evidence-based practice that's been proven to be effective in multiple states and jurisdictions throughout our nation. And we had we had a learning collaborative with several other counties and subject matter experts to help walk us through this model. We had members of your police department participate, as well as the other jurisdictions and our health systems. And we had weekly technical assistance calls with that subject matter expert to help us walk through the calculations of exactly what we would need for this model. Moving down to this bottom row on this slide, we offer at no charge to any first responders in Yolo County a crisis intervention training.
We utilize the Memphis model, which is a 40-hour training. I will say that you should be very proud of your police department because they have 100% participation in this training. We have a couple of new officers that are scheduled to go to our class next month, but not every jurisdiction is at 100%, and you should be proud that you are. We brought back the co-responder staff this past year and with the understanding that the cities would share the cost of those co-responders with us. It has been very successful. I know Woodland has one co-responder at the moment and have applied for a grant for an additional co-responder. So we're really happy to have that back. We've been working closely with the district attorney's office to divert certain drug charges and offer treatment services rather than sending them through the court process. And we're actively trying to connect our 24/7 kind of crisis line with 911 dispatch so they can transfer those calls right over. This is what our current community crisis flow looks like. It's kind of a mess. That's the gist of this slide. It's kind of a mess. Most of our folks who are in crisis end up in the hospital and emergency department. I'm sure if you have ever had the displeasure of being in a hospital or emergency department, you know how chaotic and traumatizing that can be. And just imagine if you were hearing voices or seeing things that other people didn't see and had to be in that kind of environment, often for days on end because we can't find placement for them. I will also say that this has become even worse during COVID. Our wait times currently for your police officers in the emergency departments is well over an hour at this point. We often have 75% of our emergency department beds filled with mental health clients. So it's definitely a problem. And in light of COVID, we really need all the emergency department beds for the people that are physically ill, not to be taken up by people that are mentally ill or struggling with substance abuse. This is just some data around how long people have been waiting in EDs and how much it costs our health systems. To City Manager Hyatt's point, we are partnering with our health systems as well and asking them to share in the cost of this model because they stand to save if we implement it correctly. So these are our local statistics. What we know is that 50% of the people that we take to the hospital on a 5150 hold are released within 24 hours without ever going to a psychiatric inpatient hospital. And they are released directly to the street with no services. Of the 50% that go to an inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, most of them are released within 3 to 4 days, which means they probably don't really need inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, but someplace to stay, get well and stabilize and be connected to community services. What we also know is that about 70% of all of the inmates that get booked into our jail are released within 3 days. They're generally there on things like drunk in public intoxication, those kinds of things, not public safety kind of matters. And so what we know that these are low-level crimes that may be better served by going to a treatment facility of sorts and linking those individuals to other services. I'm going to see, let me see if I can. I was going to try and show you this video, but it's too terribly complicated. It's 3 minutes and you'll have a link you can watch it at your leisure. But I'll go into the outcomes that are in that video in just a moment. So this is what we want to try, the Crisis Now model. I'm going to talk about the key components of that model, what we already have, and what we need to augment or add to our system. So the first piece of this model is a 24/7 crisis access phone line. So we already have one of these. It needs to be a little better. You may have been tracking that there's some legislation coming for a 988 number, which is where crisis mental health calls would go instead of 911. So there's kind of a lot happening in this space. We have applied to the state for $5 million to help us with some of the technology advancements we'd like to make in this 24/7 crisis line. But the county intends to continue funding that at 100%. The next piece are the 24/7 mobile crisis teams. These are what we currently call our co-responder teams. So they're not quite 24/7 yet. We have co-responders in every one of our jurisdictions, and the sheriff and probation actually share one as well. goal of the model long-term is to have these crisis response teams go out without law enforcement. So the mental health clinician and someone with lived experience would go out on these calls without law enforcement. We're not quite there yet. We're just getting our co-responders kind of acclimated and building rapport and trust and kind of getting an understanding for when we could go out on those kind of calls without law enforcement. But that is the ultimate goal. So this third bucket is the one that we don't have. It's the crisis stabilization programs. And the vision of these programs is that there would be short-term chairs. So that there would be an opportunity for people to be dropped off that needed less than 24 hours to stabilize. They would get services offered to them, get cleared up and linked to community-based services. And then there's another level, which is like a 2 to 4 day stay. So people that aren't quite ready to go after that initial 24 hours that really need to stay 2 to 4 days. I should also say that in addition to having just mental health services on site, we also envision this as a sobering center, which is very attractive to our partners in law enforcement. Many of the calls, as I mentioned earlier, many of the individuals that they come in contact with and have to take into custody, they do so based on public intoxication kind of situations. And then this last column is really just the threads that kind of go through this. It's making sure that we provide services in a trauma-informed way, making sure that we include consumers in the services we provide, that we provide suicide prevention and are responsive to our culturally competent services. So that's kind of the model in a nutshell. This is the better flow. It still looks a little messy, but it's much better. And this recovery sobering center is kind of at the center of it all and offers an opportunity for our law enforcement to come and drop off, hopefully even sometimes for our ambulances to drop off, family members and community members, and then have those individuals have a chance to stabilize and be linked to community services on the back end. The great thing about this is, like I said, the law enforcement and clinicians get to bypass the emergency room. The way this is working in Arizona is that the law enforcement are in and out within 5 to 7 minutes, and you can ask Chief Caff. They are far from that, even at the best of times. And the provider, we would be using a nonprofit community-based provider for this service, would be their contract would include the fact that they don't reject anyone. They take everyone no matter what and get the law enforcement back out on the streets protecting our communities. This is kind of talks about what happens after they get out of those 2 to 4 day stay or the less than 24 hours. We do suspect that we would have some people that visited us more than once, that we would have multiple time visitors. And the hope is that while we may not be able to prevent them from coming back, that every time we get a chance to have contact with them and offer them services, we're more likely to reduce their future kind of recidivism through this system. We will have medications on site and psychiatry services. As I mentioned, we would have a sobering center so we could help people kind of stabilize in that area. And if need be, we can transfer people to inpatient units. I think this last sentence in the middle box might be of the most interest to the council based on some of the comments I've heard in the past. We are absolutely 100% committed to returning individuals who come to this facility back to their community of origin. So if West Sac PD dropped them off, we would take them back to West Sac. If Davis dropped them off, we would take them back to Davis. We haven't identified a site, but we do have a potential site in Woodland, which is part of the reason I mentioned that. So cost savings, I think City Manager Hyatt mentioned this. We anticipate that there will be significant savings to our health system partners. And so we have asked both Sutter and Dignity for contributions to this project, not only in their community benefit dollars, but also from some emergency funds that we have called Maddie funds. And we've also said that the sustainability for this model will include the systems that save money, reinvesting some portion of that savings back into this ongoing operations of the system. So, so we've built that into our model, and we'll build it into the MOUs as well. Maricopa County is where this, in Arizona, is where this crisis now started. It's been operating over a decade there now, and they've had unbelievable cost savings in law enforcement as well as their health systems. This just kind of goes over some of those savings. In Maricopa, their program resulted in the equivalent of time saved of 37 full-time officers. The police department, the Tucson Police Department saw a reduction in their deployments, and Denver also found that the follow-up care was dramatically increased, and the subsequent arrests and incarcerations were dramatically decreased in their jurisdiction. This kind of just shows more of the savings. The inpatient hospitalization for psychiatric utilization in Arizona, they reduced by over 260 million. Again, they saved the equivalent of 37 police officers. The hospitals avoided cost losses in the amount of 37 million and reduced the total psychiatric boarding by 45 years. So this is our financial modeling for what it's going to cost us in Yolo County. As I mentioned, we already fund the crisis line. We anticipate that cost to go up, but we'll be covering that entire cost. The mobile crisis costs we share with our city partners. Between the cities and probation and the sheriff's department, they contribute about 300,000 of this 1.4 million. And then we get into the crisis receiving center and short-term beds. And this is where the ask is coming from the cities, from the health systems, and also from our board of supervisors for ARP funding. So this is my last slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about timeline and then hope to answer any questions you all might have. At the moment, we are, as I mentioned, approaching the cities and our health systems to contribute to this cause. Davis City Council voted unanimously a couple of weeks ago to support this using their ARP funds. Our board process is that they will be voting on this September 28th. They had a full presentation very similar to this just last week. And the health systems have already approved those fines that I mentioned and are taking the request for community benefit dollars up through their chain of command. Once all of the financing is figured out, we'll be releasing an RFP to cover that 24/7 crisis line. And also working on the RFP and contract for the nonprofit provider to staff the facility. We have to site, locate, and renovate whatever facility we're able to find for that crisis receiving / sobering center. And then eventually in the future, as I mentioned, we'll be moving from this co-responder model to more of a crisis team response. One thing I forgot to mention on the funding slide is that we have identified 17 different funding streams for this project. MHSA is included in it, Medi-Cal dollars, a lot of different state and federal funds. And so this gap that we're asking the cities and the county to fund using ARP is really what we see as the startup funding for the project. We based our ask for ARP dollars on population. We do intend to serve any Yolo County resident, regardless of insurance status, so whether they're privately insured or on Medi-Cal or uninsured. So we thought population would be the right mechanism, at least initially, to allocate the costs. So I think I'll stop there and answer any questions the council may have. There's a couple of links here to the Crisis Now has a website. They have a white paper, and they have not only this traffic control video, but the It's Been a Bad Day video that I couldn't quite figure out how to show you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So it's a very interesting presentation. Colleagues, do you have questions of Karen Larson? I see Councilmember Tanya Garcia Cadena's hand. Please
Yes,
proceed.
thank you. Thank you, Ms. Larson. That was a really comprehensive report. I just have a couple questions. For the facility that you're looking at, how many beds would you be, are you anticipating?
That's a really good question. I'm sorry I didn't address it in my comments. We believe based on the calculations we did with our expert that we need about 10 of those crisis receiving chairs. Those are the 24-hour or less folks, and 16 of the short-term beds, the kind of 2 to 4 day stay.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just curious, how would or would it at all, the Yolo County Suicide Prevention nonprofit, would they be working with you, or would it be completely separate? I'm just wondering how that would tie in.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out as well. I just talked to Diane Summers, actually the executive director, on Friday, because as I mentioned, there's this 988 number coming, and we already have a 24/7 crisis access line, and then we fund the suicide prevention crisis line. So trying to figure out how all of those are going to talk to one another is a part of the reason we applied for the state funding to help us connect them. In a perfect world, we would be able to just transfer calls between those numbers seamlessly, which isn't exactly how it works right at the moment.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Additional questions from the council?
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Landsberg.
A couple of questions, Karen, and thank you for the very thoughtful presentation. There's been a lot of work put into that. It's obvious that you and your staff have thought out a lot of things. A question I have is, other cities are not just responding to calls, but being a little proactive. Do you envision that the staff would be actively looking for individuals who are in crisis but may not be making the call? And we often see these individuals downtown, displaying symptoms that certainly would fit the criteria. They need some attention.
Yeah, I actually think that some of our co-responders are already doing that. It's a great question. I know that we have some high utilizers, as I mentioned earlier, and so some of our co-responders are already kind of proactively reaching out to those people without any calls coming in, just because they know they're frequent utilizers of our system. We also have some of our co-responders doing follow-up with individuals they've had a crisis call with in the days previous, and they just kind of want to follow up and check on them to make sure they're doing okay in the community. And so I could see this moving forward with this more robust staffing to be able to do that even more so.
Thank you. The other question I have is probably a little more esoteric at this point, and that is, how would this program you're envisioning work in conjunction with AB 1542, provided the governor signs it, which is Jeff Reisig's program?
Oh, I'm very familiar with it. I think, our current plan, we're all trying to figure out, is it going to get signed or not? Our contingency plan at the moment is we have put AB 109 dollars towards in custody treatment in our jail. We know that we have a significant population that is in custody already for beyond 30 or 60 or 90 days. And so our current plan is, let's give those folks who are a captive audience, for lack of a better word, let's give them substance abuse treatment while they're in custody and see if we can improve some of the outcomes. I think should 1542 be signed by the governor, there could be some synergy in terms of where we locate this project and where that might be located.
Thank you. My last question is, the facility where the officers, the responders would spend 5 to 7 minutes. Have you explored our juvenile hall as being an option?
I feel like you're lobbing me a softball at the moment. That is a Karen Larson proposed, HHSA proposed location for this facility. Our board, as you may or may not be tracking, just voted last week to find other placement for our juveniles in the juvenile detention facility, but they didn't talk about what's next. So in the weeks to come, we will be working closely with the probation chief to present an HHSA vision for the use of that campus, which will include Crisis Now.
I just thought that'd be a pretty good place for your need. Thank you.
Great minds think alike.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landsberg. Any additional council comment?
Mayor Salad, I do.
Okay,
Sorry.
Council Member Vega, and then we'll go to Council Member Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor.
Please.
Ms. Larson, thank you so much for a very thorough presentation. Very well thought out. You know, I've seen our emergency rooms, and oftentimes I see our patrol cars parked out there, and I come and go, and they stay there, which is, I think, is an ineffective time use of their time, and also not really a great place for folks who are having this crisis, and not to mention the caregivers that aren't really equipped to deal with a lot of these situations. So I think this is a great program. I do have a couple of questions. So you mentioned as far as you're going to be taking everybody, which is great. So there is going to be a billing mechanism to whether it be the partnership health plan locally or the health insurance plan, commercial ones if they have it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that, you know, in the past when we've tried models like this, we've only billed Medi-Cal because that's kind of our core population of focus. But in order for this to be sustainable, we really have to be able to bill those private insurance companies. We've noticed the numbers of the privately insured are really ramping up in our emergency departments and hospitals.
Yeah, and then just speaking of the strategic partnerships, was Partnership Health Plan engaged? Okay.
Yeah, very much so. I actually am a commissioner on Partnership Health Plans board, and so we've been in close contact, and several of their other counties are also participating in the learning collaborative I mentioned. One of the ways we think they can support us the most is there's some funding coming down for sobering centers that will help with our sustainability, and so they've been very amenable to including that in the proposal they're working on.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be all.
Thank you.
And now I think Councilmember Fernandez, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard, and thank you, Karen, so much for your presentation. I just have a couple of just clarifying questions for you. You mentioned there was a $4 million amount on your presentation. Was that an amount that would be shared between the participating cities and county, or was that a misunderstanding?
I can go back. I think you're talking about this slide.
Right.
What I will say is what we're asking for the cities is to give us about $1 million a year split between the three cities. We're not including Winters because we just don't have a lot of call volume. And when we base that on population, I can tell you Woodland's share. We were hoping that Woodland would be able to contribute $325,301 a year for 3 years.
Could you repeat that again?
$325,000, 301.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify the dollar amount. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Any additional questions, Councilmember Fernandez?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, I'd just like to say that I think the concept sounds terrific. I'm sure all of us have seen so much wasted professional assistance. The person falls on the sidewalk, the fire department gets called, they're taken to the emergency room, the police, of course, are called, and then if it's due to some kind of criminal activity, they're taken to the jail and they get booked, and it just goes on, and then they're released. And I don't know if there's been any correction or assistance. So a wraparound program like this makes a lot of sense. And I was very impressed with the Maricopa slide that showed that they've documented the reduction in demand for police and other emergency responder support. That's very good. So, I would I'd be interested to pursue a recommendation on this. I do have one concern, and it's a concern felt in this community, Karen, and that's because we're the county seat. A lot of people come here for services like this. So I'm concerned with how you repatriate people to their home communities after they've been served.
This is exactly why I included on the slide, because this is often the Woodland feedback we hear. And so we are absolutely committed to returning individuals back to their communities of origin. In the state grant that we applied for, that $5 million grant, we included vehicles that would be used to transport people back to their communities of origin. So we are committed to that and would write it into the MOU gladly.
As you know, there's no car sent around to people when they're released from the jail. They're released with a bus ticket, and they may wait for the bus or they may not. So it's important to us that we be treated fairly in this respect. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you again for the presentation. Is there a member of the public who's indicated a desire to be heard, Madam Clerk?
No.
All right. Sounds like that concludes our presentation for this evening. We'll look forward to following this and working with you further. Mr. Manager, any concluding comment?
Now, what we'll do is we'll follow up with an MOU and bring back to council for consideration comprehensive MOU and a funding recommendation for the city's participation.
Thank you. And again, Karen Larson, many thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you. Take care.
Karen. Mr. Mayor, I have a question for the city manager.
Go ahead, Mr. Landsberg.
On this topic. It would be helpful to me, Ken, when we look at this and coming back to council with it, if staff could do an analysis that provided we do this program, what would we be saving in other areas such as fire department response, police response, et cetera, host officers, et cetera. If there could be some analysis on that, would be helpful to gauge the effectiveness of it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Landsberg. I think that will now conclude item 13. Are we ready to return to item 12 and hear about the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report? Dan, are you available to talk?
I am ready. I think you can hear me.
Thank you. We can.
Excellent. So good evening, Mayor and Council members. Dan Sokolow, Senior Planner, Community Services Department. Each year, the city prepares a CAPER, which summarizes our progress in meeting our community development needs and objectives during a program year, a one-year period. And we look at, in particular, activities funded through CDBG. We also look at other activities that are funded through other funding sources, such as the General Fund, Measure J, special grant funds, and our affordable housing funds. Just looking at CDBG for the prior program year, about 80% of our public service dollars went towards food and shelter programs. Examples would be Yellow Wayfair Center's Emergency Shelter, Short-Term Emergency Aid Committee, which does a eviction prevention program assisting primarily extremely low-income households who are renters so they don't get evicted when they're short on their rent through sometimes circumstances that just happen in life. Another example is Yellow County Meals on Wheels, which provides daily meals to mostly extremely low-income seniors at their homes. They also perform a second service, which is checks on how they're doing. So a wellness check as well. That's a quick summary of public services. Looking at construction projects, which were allocated funds during the program year, there were 5 of them. 3 of them have not started construction. 2 of them are Friends of the Mission projects for water heater efficiency, replacing existing water heaters at Walter's House, which is transitional housing and treatment facility with tankless water heaters, which are approximately 93% efficient. So there'll be a savings of water and saving of energy. They're also will be doing that at an apartment complex on North Street, which provides housing for formerly homeless individuals and families. That will occur later this calendar year. A third project, New Hope Community Development Corporation, receives an allocation for rehab of their affordable housing complex for seniors, Cottonwood Meadows. They're going to delay that project to 2022, and they will combine funding with their 21-22 allocation, so they'll be able to get more bang for their buck, and they'll actually construct next year. Two projects, which are one is done and one is almost done. The almost done one is the city's ADA accessibility program or project, and that's at least 20 ramp locations ADA compliant ramps are being installed throughout Woodland. That should be done next month, and that's using allocations from two program years, 2021 and 1920. Then finally, Communicare Health Centers at their Hampton Family Health Center here in Woodland. They purchased materials for shade cover, which has been installed for the outdoor garden and classroom here in Woodland. One other CDBG highlight is the city did receive CARES Act CDBG allocations from the federal government. The first allocation, which was over $300,000, was used to purchase commercial modular trailers to support the new emergency shelter for showers, laundry, restrooms, and kitchen. But looking at things that weren't necessarily funded through CDBG, but we've noted in CAPER because they're pretty significant in terms of our community development needs and objectives, would be construction of the new emergency shelter, increasing the bed count to 100. That, of course, opened up in early January of this year. The city was a significant funder of that project, acted as the developer, provided the land. We had other project partners, including Yellow County, Dignity Health, Woodland Opportunity Village, Fourth and Hope, and Friends of the Mission. And that's, of course, the first component of the East Beamer Way campus. Two other quick items. One is Project Room Key. That ended in June of this year for Woodland. So we helped staff that in terms of placements, in terms of arranging food for some of the clients and other services. In particular, the staffing efforts really led by our homeless coordinator, Kristen Klein, and also working with the on-site staff from Empower Yellow to assist whenever possible in moving people from room key to permanent housing whenever opportunities came up, particularly the older clients who are probably the most vulnerable. The last thing I want to note is Council has been supportive of using Measure J funds for a number of purposes, including recreational scholarships. These are partial scholarships for our summer rec program. These are focused on youth from lower income families, which assists them to participate in our activities. And I think our number was about 178 youth benefited from the previous program year. So that gives you a quick summary of what we've included in terms of major highlights in our CAPER. Public hearing is required tonight. If council has any questions, staff would be more than happy to address them.
Thank you. I think before we go to council, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. The hearing is now open. Madam Clerk, is there anyone wishing to comment on this report tonight?
I don't have any emails and no one is raising their hand.
All right. In that event, I'll close the public hearing. If someone subsequently communicates to us while we're discussing this, we'll reopen it. Council, is there any questions or comments about the report as presented tonight? I think
quick comment to Dan, Mayor. Thank you, Dan. You're always full of information, helpful information, and it helps us figure out where we're at. So thank you for your efforts.
You're welcome.
And Councilmember Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Stallard. Thank you, Mr. Socolo. I just had a quick question that I asked earlier to Ken. On page 276, there is a summary of consolidated plan projects for report year. I just wanted to clarify on that. It has projected estimates, project estimates on there, and then committed amounts. And so I just wanted to double check on that, if it was just a misunderstanding on my part where there are those columns with the zeros that follow the project estimates. There's no figures. And I noticed that in the previous pages, it kind of gives a summary of each project and how it's funded. So are those supposed to kind of work hand in hand, or maybe can you just explain why all the zeros in those columns?
Sure. For the CAPER, until we actually, well, you have sub-recipients who've spent funds on projects, and there has been a significant delay in us getting under contract with HUD for the 2021 program year. So we're about there. Until we actually get in contract with them and draw down funds to reimburse ourselves for funds we've expended for CDBG projects, we can't put a number what's in the column, which I think you're referring to actual expenditures on that. Until such time, that's why that's going to look a little odd at this time.
Okay, so even though we've expended those amounts and they're committed, then it's not until probably the following year that those.
No, I would anticipate in most cases that would be done in the next couple months. With the one exception is we do have one construction project will not occur until next year, and that would be New Hope Community Development Corporation's Cottonwood Meadows rehab.
Okay. And then just one more question, sorry. With them, I noticed on here there was the safe harbor. Is that part of the CB, the grants?
Yeah, and Safe Harbor was completed either earlier this month or late last month. So we received their final billing, and that's getting processed. So they are done. They still have to submit an annual report. So they, indicate the demographics, how many people benefited, the breakdown in terms of race, and also whether they were Hispanic as well, because we report that to HUD on online system reporting.
Okay, and then just a question out of curiosity that may not be relevant. Would you, or does this grant program allow for collaboration with any other mental health programs? So would you be involved if the city adopts the Crisis Now? Would that be part of implementation or funding from your program?
I don't know that CDBG would be a good source given the limited amount of public service dollars we receive each year. For example, the previous program year, it's about 77,000. And and they're looking for more substantial support, I think, for the ongoing operations.
I just wondered. Thank you for your time and your information.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, we've any additional comments from the council? Okay, we've had a report, we've had our public hearing, we've had our council comments and questions. The action is to we've done the public hearings to adopt the resolution approving the CDBG report. Is there a motion to do so?
Fernandez.
Okay, Councilmember Fernandez moves that we adopt the CAPER report. Second, please.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia Cadena seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye.
Mayor Stallard?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for the hard work. Thank you, colleagues, for your patience. So we are now moving on to the last item on the agenda this evening, and that's item 14, Council Priority Goals and Strategic Actions for 2021 and 2022. And we're going to get an update from our city manager. Mr. Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully my share screen is working.
It is.
Good. So tonight I wanted to provide the council with a 6-month check-in on your strategic goals, priority goals and strategic actions that were adopted back in March of this year. And then secondly, get some council feedback on a second component of strategic goals that the council asked for. And that was to help identify a set of indicators that could inform and help provide the community and the council a quick snapshot of how we're trending relative to the 4 key goal areas. And so we've spent some time thinking about what are those key indicators or metrics that we can track relatively easily with existing data sources and provide a quantitative temperature around how we're performing in these 4 key goal areas. So if you recall, the council priority goals and strategic action process involved an all-day retreat. The council back in February spent an entire day together reflecting on the goals and strategic actions that had been kind of the foundation of the council's priorities for the prior really 10 to 12 years. And through that process, really desired to kind of refine and consolidate to some degree the key priority goal areas and ultimately the actions underlying each of those. And so what you see here are the 4 key priority goal areas that the council ultimately adopted to focus on, and that is improve quality of life, focus on economic development downtown, strengthen our public safety and infrastructure, and then lastly, enhance governance and fiscal responsibility. And so all of the strategic actions that ultimately got embedded into the priority goals fall into one of these 4 categories. I want to walk through for somewhat of a refresher for the council on each of these goal areas, what the priority key initiatives were that you have identified, followed by the key indicators that we've outlined, and get your feedback on those at the end of the presentation. So firstly, the key initiatives under quality of life contain about 15 different sort of strategic actions. And what you see here are each one of those identified in bullet form. And rather than talk through where we're at with each of these, I want to highlight some of the key ones that we've been able to, over the last 6 months, really make progress and advance. The Youth Master Plan was a key initiative that the council had previously identified and have supported us continuing to partner with the school district. That Youth Master Plan process did commence this past year. We are nearing the conclusion of phase 1 of that master plan process. The second phase will commence over the coming months, where we'll actually engage with the youth and the families in the community and hear directly from them around how the programs and services that are currently being provided in our community are serving their needs and their awareness around the programs and services that are currently available. That will then inform the final phase of the Youth Master Plan, which will actually be a strategic framework for how we, the city and the school district and other community partners can align our efforts more directly with the desired programs and services that we hear from the community and do so in a way that's more efficient and effective. So over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, look forward to that Youth Master Plan really coming to conclusion. So far, it's been a very productive coordination. The consultant that the school district has engaged has done a phenomenal job of helping us all develop a common language to speak to the youth in our community in a way that ultimately will create a firm foundation for us to define programs and services that sort of cross each of our organizations. Secondly, the Woodland Promise Program, if the council recalls, during the last 6 months, we supported allocating some Measure J funding to offer to graduating high school students in Woodland the opportunity to attend Woodland Community College at no cost, provide that last dollar. That program has now successfully been launched. We heard from the community college that so far they've received application for 30 students to take advantage of this program, 8 of which have already been approved. So We anticipate the first cohort, the Woodland Province program, to be about 30 students, continue to grow from there. Certainly the East Beamer Way campus project, top priority for us to expand and relocate homeless services in a more coordinated fashion. Since January, the shelter has been in operation, and we've since advanced infrastructure improvements to develop the site for the 61 permanent supportive housing projects. Continue to work very closely with Friends of the Mission, who will ultimately own and operate the 61 permanent supportive units. We've transferred ownership of the shelter to Friends of the Mission, continue to work with them on providing, not just shelter services overnight, but actually day services and case management as part of the daytime program activity out there. The second aquatic complex was another top priority initiative of the council. Several meetings back, we provided a presentation to the council on a preliminary funding strategy. We are refining the project scope, and we'll be meeting with the council subcommittee of Mayor Stollard and Councilmember Landsberg in the coming weeks to get their input on the final project scope and recommendation on the funding strategy. So I hope to be back to council in the next month and a half with the next step, which would be to confirm the project scope and the funding strategy. The Woodland Regional Park has been a long-going initiative, one that's been somewhat quiet over the last 6 to 8 months, but did want to provide an update that the city, in partnership with Tuolumne and Explore It, did secure over $1.5 million in state park grant funding that half of which was to go towards path improvements and wetland improvements out there, which are now more or less complete. Within the next 2 weeks, we anticipate having the new well that's been installed on the site power from PG&E, such that we can now fill the wetlands with water and then move into the final phase of the riparian restoration component of that project and get planting in this fall. Originally, we had hoped to be able to open up the park to the public this fall. Given kind of where we're at with getting landscaping established and, thinking about, bringing the public out next spring when it's in full bloom and in full glory might be a better time. So look forward to a full public grand opening of the Woodland Regional Park, probably around the February or March timeframe next year. Traffic calming has been a topic of interest throughout the community and therefore a key priority for the council to focus on. We've had some success over the last several years with implementing the new traffic calming program and working with neighborhoods who have submitted requests for not just analysis, but ultimately qualifying for both active and passive traffic calming. Those projects seem to be advancing and being well received. We're now engaged with the next wave of neighborhood requests, particularly the Southwest Street entryway as you come into the community. Just last week, we received a consultant plan for a series of traffic calming that would assist in slowing cars as they're approaching into the community northbound on West Street, as well as those cars that are exiting south. So we'll be presenting that traffic calming proposal to the neighborhood in the coming month with a recommendation scheduled to come back to council to implement that as part of next spring's construction season. The council did include in the budget this year an additional $50,000 to continue traffic calming improvements in neighborhoods. And we, I believe, have a sort of a growing interest across the community to continue to work with them to analyze the traffic issues and then ultimately identify either passive or active traffic calming. And so good engagement in starting to build better communication with our neighborhood. Yesterday at the infrastructure subcommittee, there was a recommendation that we put together, just one pager PDF of, how does a neighborhood approach the city with a request for traffic calming, and what does that process look like? So we'll be putting together a simple 4 or 5 step traffic calming for neighborhoods requests so that council can use as a tool to point interested neighborhoods to. Wanted to also point out, creating and promoting additional multicultural events was a new topic that the council discussed at the retreat, partially in response to the need to help uplift our community. But some of the feedback that we asked the councils to go out and ask their constituents in their neighborhood had a consistent theme around the desire to have more and more events in the community that bring the community together and do so in a way that reflects the entire community and the cultures that we have here to celebrate. And so we've been partnering with several different organizations to advance multicultural focused events. Unfortunately, the Farm Worker Appreciation event that we were excited to launch first time this fall was postponed. And that postponement of events is something that we probably will continue to see through next year. But what we have built is some really great concepts for future years for us to continue to grow events that really highlight the multicultural characteristics of the community. And then enhance engagement awareness through multilingual communication. The council was a consistent theme again across all goal areas was, how can we better communicate with our community and do so in a way that, again, touches as many people. And so we have successfully, implemented, bilingual communication for almost all communications that we put out, as well as promotions. And so we believe that is starting to bear fruit as people are starting to track and receive communication from the city in multiple languages and engaging more consistently. And then lastly, community childcare needs was an issue identified, and this is partially pandemic related, where we've heard a lot of feedback from the community around the need for childcare, and we have, through the ARP process, primarily really started to understand better where the needs are in this community, and we will be, as part of the ARP funding plan, making recommendations to advance projects that will begin to address some of the childcare needs, and that's both from supporting the childcare providers, but also creating new facilities in the community that will support families that need childcare. The key priority indicators for this quality of life that we've started to identify and again, welcome feedback on would be, how are we trending on voting and civic engagement metrics? How are we on an annual basis investing in parks and open space and active transportation amenities, which are commonly identified as sort of key quality of life amenities? How many unique participants are we seeing in our programs, particularly in the youth programs, both at the library and community services department? So we're going to be doing a better job of identifying who's participating in our programs, and then reporting trends regarding not just total participants, but also unique participants that may not have participated in the past. Moving on to economic development, again, a healthy set of about 14 to 15 key initiatives, and highlighting some of the more important ones that we've advanced over the last several months. The Lab at Ag Start opened up back in May of this year. That was an initiative that the city helped partner and leverage nearly $1.5 million in federal and other private dollars. That lab is now 28 of the lab benches have been spoken for. Just yesterday, I learned that the Lab at AgStart has signed a lease for additional space in the Wiseman building. So the program, just 4 months in, is proving that the demand that we anticipated is there, and we'll continue to bring new companies and new jobs into Woodland, which leads to the Woodland Research Technology Park project. The entitlement of that has been advancing. We will be back to the council in November with the final set of council actions to consider for certification of the EIR, adoption of the specific plan, as well as the development agreement. Comprehensive zoning update has been another longstanding general plan update follow-up. That comprehensive zoning update will be brought to the council probably just after the end of this year, and ultimately will be the final puzzle piece to help streamline development and entitlement for new reinvestment in the community. Outdoor dining and parklets was a project that we initiated last December with some CARES Act dollars that were offered by the county. Those parklets have been installed now for just about approaching a year, and we are now evaluating with the downtown merchants, the businesses, how those are performing, and whether we want to continue to allow those to be in downtown or potentially modify those. But on all accounts, community feedback has been very positive on those, and has absolutely supported the restaurant businesses in downtown through this difficult time. JAPA Parking Management Pilot Program. So this was a project that was launched just at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's a project that specific to economic development touches several things. One, the JAPA owners or entrepreneurs are Woodland residents. They are UC Davis graduates that developed this technology, and we partnered with them to deploy 150 of their parking sensors in downtown. And just this week, we will be more publicly launching to the community that these parking sensors are available, and they tie to a parking app that helps customers find available parking downtown. But another important aspect of this is it helps our parking enforcement officers more efficiently identify parking violations downtown, as opposed to sticking with a fixed route. They can now do point enforcement. And then on the back end, we have robust data and analytics, so we can track when parking utilization downtown is at its peak, and where parking activity may warrant additional modifications to time zones and things like that. So exciting to sort of support a local entrepreneur, but also do so in a way that helps us perform our services in a more efficient manner, and provide data to help us identify ways to continue to support downtown economic development. The Shop Small, Eat Local campaign was launched this past year, and has really resonated well with the community. We continue to partner with our downtown small business community, as well as small businesses outside of the downtown, to support and bring awareness to the assets that we have offered by these small businesses. Strengthening communications to better engage with businesses in all areas of the community was another highlighted topic that was brought up at the retreat. This year, we're going to be focusing our business walk on areas that are sort of outside the traditional, downtown and industrial areas, and really targeting some of these smaller business areas along West Main Street, Court Street, East Street. And these are businesses in areas that generally feel that the city is not focused on supporting them. And so we look forward to engaging directly with them and hearing some of their concerns and issues, and getting them more engaged in the economic development activity. And then lastly, implementing new marketing events and promotions that drive increased business activity and hotel stays. Again, important to help us sort of pull ourselves out of this economic impacted time, but challenged by the fact that it's very difficult to plan and promote events in the current pandemic. And so again, a lot of good foundation work I think has been laid. So next year we anticipate as we come out of the pandemic that we'll have a lot of momentum to help implement and bring new events and grow the events that the community so loves. So look forward to that. Priority indicators for economic developments, really the traditional ones of sales tax, property tax, transit occupancy tax. We'll be tracking and trending to see how we're performing. Another one that will be a little bit more difficult, but through our building permit process, we'll be tracking, how much investment that we're seeing in commercial property, particularly reinvestments, whether that's new construction or expansion or tenant improvements. It's a good indicator, I believe, of how healthy our local economy is. And then lastly, the vacancy rate. So another very traditional way to sort of track how our economy is doing is, how much vacant space do we have available, both in land as well as vacant building space. But at the moment, we're actually concerned that we don't have enough available space for businesses to expand or locate in town. But as we fix some of the zoning and position some of the properties both in the tech park and the industrial area to be able to move forward, it'll be important for us to continue to track the vacancy rate. Touch real quickly on public safety and infrastructure. Some of the key areas that we have been focused on are updating the strategic plans for both the police and fire departments. The council heard a presentation from Chief Caff a few meetings back on their updated strategic plan. Working with Chief Zane right now to outline an update for the fire departments and its strategic plan. We've also spent significant time with Youth Gang Reduction Intervention Program to redefine what its goal, purpose, and priorities are. We've made some significant strides in working with our local county and school district partners to really redefine how we want to invest in our youth in a way that gives them alternative path to participating in gangs. And so some good work there. And then certainly the reduced gun violence focus is really highlighted by the city's commitment to advance peace. And that advanced peace program has now been launched and first mentor has been hired. So over the course of the next year, we anticipate really starting to see the advanced peace investment start to take shape. Increased traffic and speed enforcement efforts. This kind of ties to the community safety and traffic issue. And working with the police department to really be strategic about deploying and emphasizing the need for us to perform traffic enforcement efforts throughout town. We've doubled the amount of citations issued. And I think really over the course of the next year, hopefully you'll start to see change in behavior patterns as people are becoming more and more aware that traffic enforcement is an important issue in this community. Lower Cache Creek flood study, so big milestone on that project with approval from the Army Corps of Engineers for the Cache Creek flood project back in June. We will now sort of launch into the public education process where as we head into identifying how to fund the local share for the project, identifying to the community the need and the benefit of providing flood protection will be critical. So we're working with communications manager and our flood team to outline a very clear and concise message around flood protection and the importance to provide flood protection on the funding for the project. So look forward for that over the course of the next 6 months as well. And then lastly, and very importantly right now, as we experience probably one of the worst bouts on record, the need for us to continue to invest in not just the efficiency of our current water system, but also the resiliency. We will be hopefully receiving a grant from the state for expanding our recycled water project later this year that will allow much of the southeast area to get access to recycled water for landscape. So we'll continue to see a focus around how to improve our water system. Some priority indicators in this category, calls for service, both for police and fire, of course, will be key. Not just the number of calls, but the types of calls, traffic violations and accidents, how we're trending on gun violence, not just to our local community trends, but also on a national basis. Neighborhood watch programs. We've had a significant focus on really promoting engagement and creation of new neighborhood watch programs. So we will continue to use that as a key indicator on neighborhood safety and whatnot. And then lastly, how are we performing in terms of leveraging federal and state funding to help pay for some of the infrastructure as well as public safety programs and services. So we'll round it out with enhanced government and fiscal responsibility, improve public access to information, constituent services. So this ties back to doing a better job of communicating with our community. So we've been investing in, again, more concerted effort towards how and where we message various services, working with Spencer Bowen, our communications manager, to put together a comprehensive communications strategy that will address both internal communications within the organization, but also externally. So we'll be launching that by the end of the year. We'll also invest in improved service delivery and organizational efficiencies. The Crisis Now presentation that you just heard is a good example of how we can strategically invest in alternative ways of delivering services that have returns far greater than the investment. And so working through various opportunities, I would say focus largely around public safety because that's where a lot of our costs and service delivery requirements are. How do we, both from law enforcement standpoint, but also from fire response, EMT, really rethink how we deliver our services in a way that's more sustainable financially in the long term, and at the same time provide better services and outcome for the community. Collaborating with other partners, both agencies as well as nonprofits, has been a key thing. The ARP process has really given us an opportunity to have deeper conversations and focused conversations around how we can collaborate with these partners to create new programs or reinvest in programs. So it's starting to improve benefits and then conduct a comprehensive evaluation of existing communication efforts. That's all part of our communication strategy that we'll be launching later this fall. And then evaluation of our city boards, commissions, committees, strength and alignment with council priorities. So we continue to evaluate what we ask our commissions and our committees to do and ensure that they are in alignment with the council goals and initiatives, but also in a way that inspires community members to want to get engaged in our commissions and committee and really feel like they have an impact in shaping and improving the quality of life in our community. So I'll just round out real quick with some of the indicators in this category. Certainly the budgetary reserve, how we're performing relative to achieving our general fund reserve fund balance target of 20%. How are we doing with employee retention and recruitment? At the end of the day, our service delivery is dependent on the people that work for the city. And if we can't retain and recruit quality and talented employees, it's really going to show in terms of our ability to achieve some of the goals and community trust and support. And then we'll track, how we doing on vacancies on our boards and commissions. In the past, we have had some issues with trying to fill these opportunities. And so, with our last round of recruitment process, we were able to fill all the vacancies in our commissions last June. But it's an ongoing effort to continue to identify and recruit individuals that want to serve on our commissions. But I believe our success in the last several months in filling these vacancies, not just with people that want to serve, but actually want to serve and have an impact, has been beneficial. And then engagement on communications. Our ability to, connect with our community through various forms of communication, we can measure, through technology now. So we will continue to identify and analyze how people are actually engaging with the communications that we put out, and then adapt our communication strategies based on those analytics. So that concludes the update on council goals. Welcome any comments, feedback, and suggestions on how we can continue to move forward and stay focused on some of these key initiatives, and welcome any comments on some of these indicators that we hope to track.
Well, Mr. Manager, that was a real tour de force. If we weren't tired before you started, we're tired now. Clearly, a lot has been going on, even throughout this pandemic. So it's very affirming to hear the many initiatives that are proceeding in spite of all the challenges that come along that weren't not part of our strategic discussion back in February. Council members, I invite each of you, if you have a question, to go ahead and raise it. Maybe I'll just call on you individually, starting with you, Council Member Garcia Cadena. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Ken. That was a very thorough presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez.
Again, I'm going to just echo my colleagues' comments. Thank you, Ken, for the thorough overview of everything that we discussed in February, and the action and service that all the employees of the city of Woodland are doing to make sure that we are fulfilling those goals and actions that we have focused on for this year. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. City Manager, thank you so much. This is a great presentation. I appreciate all the work and effort into delivering this. Looks amazing. I'm really energized to see our presentation tonight following Chief Cass, and how we see all of the priority goal areas being woven into the initiatives of the police department, and looking forward to seeing that throughout the remaining city departments and services. I'm chomping at the bit to see all those metrics, how we're tracking. I think you're spot on with all of them. I know that took a lot of thought and process, so thank you, and to your team for putting that together.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega, and thank you again for all the work you did to make that strategic retreat such a productive session. I think you're seeing the fruit of your work with this report in part. Thank you. All right, Council Member Landsberg.
Just one question. What exactly do you do with your spare time, Mr. City Manager?
You haven't heard about his garden project.
It's therapy. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you can tell Mr. Manager that we're very grateful for that presentation, and find it quite affirming for all the good work that our staff throughout the organization is doing. Do you have any concluding comment before we finish this item?
No, just in that, I think it's very important for the council to acknowledge their unity around the strategic goals and actions that you want to take. Without that unity, right, it becomes very difficult for us at the staff level to sort of gauge and shift, priorities. And so for us to be successful in implementing these priorities, I think the council needs to take credit for providing that leadership and direction and finding that commonality on where you want to focus. And then lastly, to Councilmember Landsberg's question, right? 99% of what we presented tonight, right, is performed by the incredible staff that I'm fortunate to be able to support and manage. So they make this job look relatively easy as they effectively and proficiently advance some of these. And so I just want to make sure we acknowledge all the great work across the organization that goes into advancing these goals.
Thank you, Ken. And I think we are more than happy to spread our appreciation to all of the colleagues who work here so hard for the benefit of our public. We're also very happy to take a little credit ourselves. I do think you can count on us to be unified. The strategic retreat was an outstanding vehicle for allow us to really talk together and get on the same page, literally as we worked with sheets of newsprint or whatever and got a lot down on paper. And then you and the staff refined it. So it's nice to be here. And I think we start to set a good path here. And next year, I know our incoming Mayor Vega will make sure that we continue on that path. All right. Madam Clerk, did any member of the public wish to be heard on this issue?
Yes, Mark Ullman is raising his hand.
Oh, well, Mark, thank you for your patience. I should have called upon you sooner. So please, let us hear from Mark Ullman.
Mark?
Maybe he went to bed.
Mark, I want to make sure I'm audible. I didn't see the pop-up. So Mayor Stallard, members of the council, thank you for this presentation on the council goals and strategies. I think they're commendable. I was very impressed by the breadth of these strategies. I do have a question, however, and that is when I compare them to the strategies and goals enumerated on the prior fiscal year that I can find on the city's website today, I see some notable absences. And one of them, as a key strategy, was mentioned, quote, focus on sustainability and resiliency to climate change. And then there were a number of climate action plans supporting projects or programs under certain categories, such as reduce non-renewable energy demand, increase renewable energy supply, maintain, enhance, and improve the city's tree canopy, et cetera. Now, the city's Sustainability Advisory Committee, which I have chaired for the last year, has engaged in a number of initiatives, including a heat island mitigation pilot program in cooperation with the city and the Tree Foundation. Grant funding has been awarded just this past August of 2021 to fund it. We've conducted a survey of the city, overlaying a heat island data map of the city, which reflects the fact that many underserved communities within the city or neighborhoods within the city lack adequate tree cover, and we're going to see what we can do about that. We're conducting a vehicle electrification survey. We recently completed the Coastal Cleanup Day, as was acknowledged earlier. Thank you, Allison Martin from our committee for organizing that. She also wants to promote a town hall style meeting with citizens and stakeholder groups to discuss sustainability issues that pertain to them. I would like to say that I've just finished my tenure as chair. I've handed the gavel over to Catalina Munoz, who will do an excellent job. And I've finished my year 2 report for the committee, which I'll submit to the council. It's been submitted to the committee itself for review and has been moved to our October meeting, which will be on the 20th. There are some areas, however, that are still pending for us. One of them was the work of our Civic Spark intern, Gianelli Morones, who completed her work approximately a year and a half ago. At least it was in progress at that time when she left. Her contract expired, which was develop a climate action story map and outreach framework for the city, especially to underserved communities, perhaps that would require extra work in terms of resilience and lowering energy bills and improving their neighborhoods against inevitable climate change. And finally, I've made repeated requests to get a joint working session together with the City Council to share ideas, and hopefully that can still be arranged. I was hoping to do it live, but it looks like that won't be possible. So I'm hoping we can restore some of those earlier goals reflecting the Climate Action Plan progress, which would make that plan more relevant to residents of the community and especially future generations, because it does send a message and it's going to be important. We have a very diligent group of people on this committee, and I think we need a closer working relationship with the council. So please utilize us to the extent possible. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for your colleagues on the Sustainability Committee for the leadership in these different areas. Certainly the coastal cleanup activity last weekend, and you bring up many good points. I don't think you can regard the presentation tonight as comprehensive. It's the significant things we're working on, but not comprehensive in the sense that there's many other things we're doing. Again, thanks to colleagues like you. So I appreciate your reporting to us tonight, and what you've asked for has not fallen on deaf ears, just hasn't been accommodated yet. So we'll do our best to make that happen. Anyone else on the council want to respond or comment?
Mayor Stallard, we
Yes.
have someone, Christine Shoemaker, wanting to speak.
All right, please invite her in. Thank you. Christine?
Christine?
So thank you, Mayor Stallard and council, for inviting me to make a comment. So my name is Christine Kimball Shoemaker, and I'm a resident of Woodland and a retired plant molecular biologist. And I want to thank Mr. Hyatt and staff for a very comprehensive report. I also want to thank my fellow Woodland resident, Mark Allman, for his comments relating to climate and sustainability. I was a bit both shocked and dismayed when I didn't see climate, sustainability, clean energy, or clean air in the strategic goals document and graphic. We know from the most recent IPCC report that the world is at code red for climate, and the recent fires and floods and droughts and heat storms in the US and Canada and Europe are emblematic of that. It's happening much faster than many predicted, and it is important for the residents of Woodland to see that it is one of the priorities for the city. While we do have a climate action plan, work could be done, such as working on building electrification, and an evaluation of our progress relating to the climate action plan is certainly warranted. Both mitigation, stopping emissions, and resilience and adaptation, dealing with the outcomes, are needed. Resilience is dealing with the symptoms of the disease or the problem, while mitigation goes to the root cause, and you have to do both. I do note that resilience is noted for water, but it needs to be broader than that, and mitigation should be mentioned as well. Some nearby jurisdictions, including Murillo County, have declared climate emergencies. And the idea of a council public meeting on climate change addressing the negative impacts of climate on our health and economy and the elimination of emissions should happen soon. For me, the public needs to know addressing climate change is a high priority. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you for your service representing our community on the Citizens Advisory Committee, which you chair for Valley Clean Energy. And Mark, also, thank you for your service on that same committee. It's almost like hiding in plain sight. We all care about sustainability. We just need to be more emphatic about it as we develop our strategic goals. So your comments have not fallen on deaf ears. Any additional comments, Madam Clerk?
None.
All right. Well, I believe that concludes our meeting this evening. I'm just going to make a quick round. Any final words, colleagues? Vicki? Nope. Rich, Myra, Tanya? It's all been said. Well, with that, we'll adjourn in memory of our late friend, Al Smith, who did so much for our community. And we'll return on the first Tuesday in October at 6 o'clock. Have a good evening, everyone, and good night.